Today, we're going to debug a really critical error in our social operating system, the one that governs the relationship between our rights and our duties. We're going to reframe rights not as some kind of moral gift, but as what they actually are: legally binding contractual obligations.
So let me ask you a question. Do you have to contribute to society first to earn your fundamental rights? You've probably heard this idea before, maybe phrased as you can't get your rights until you've done your duties. It sounds kind of plausible, right? Like a simple transaction. But is that actually how our system is supposed to work?
No, it's not. That idea is a fundamental bug in the way we understand the social contract. It's a deep misunderstanding that causes massive system failures, and today we're going to trace where it comes from and figure out how to patch it. So first, let's isolate this bug: the belief that you have to earn your rights through contributions. Let's call that the duty fallacy. It's a really dangerous misreading of the basic agreement that holds liberal democracies together.
Here's where a lot of people get it twisted. They see the social contract like a business deal, You pay your taxes, you do your duties, and in return the government gives you rights. But the reality is the complete opposite. The contract is actually a security agreement. You already own the assets, your rights, and you hire the government to protect them.
To really get why this is a bug, we have to go back and check the original source code, the foundational political philosophy that our whole system of government is built on.
You can actually see how this idea evolved. Back in 1651, you had Thomas Hobbes writing in Leviathan that we basically trade our freedom for security to escape a chaotic state of nature. But the critical update, the real patch to the system, came from John Locke in 1689. Locke argued that rights aren't something the state gives us. They are property we already own before the state even exists.
And Locke himself put it brilliantly in his two treatises of government. The core of his argument is right here. The very first and most fundamental property you own is yourself, self-ownership. Everything else, all other rights, grow from that single seed.
And this brings us to the definition of natural rights. They aren't a bonus for good behavior or a reward for paying your taxes. They are the original capital, the starting assets that every single one of us brings to the social contract. The government doesn't grant them. Its whole job is to protect them.
So if the original design, the source code, is correct, why does the system break down so often? Well, the problem isn't with the theory. It's an implementation error. The code itself is fine, but the execution is flawed because of missing specifications. This brings us to a fascinating concept from a 2026 paper by the researcher Yamauchi. The Japanese phrase Shouganai is often translated as "it can't be helped," implying a sort of cultural resignation. But its literal technical meaning is there is no method or specifications are missing. It's not a person sighing in defeat, it's the system itself reporting an error.
And here's how that error actually plays out. A citizen comes forward to claim a right, like the right to a minimum standard of living under Article 25 of the Japanese Constitution. The official at the desk checks the procedures, but they find no specific instructions, no budget line, no method for actually delivering on that right. So the system just returns a method not found error, which the official then says out loud as Shouganai. The right exists in theory, but it can't be executed in practice.
But this isn't just some procedural hiccup, it's a potential breach of contract. In the Japanese Civil Code, for example, Articles 656 and 644 establish that welfare services are a kind of contract. This means the state has a legal duty of care. Failing to have a method to access a right isn't just bad service, it's a failure to uphold a serious contractual obligation.
Okay, so recognizing this contractual failure lets us completely reframe the solution. This stops being about spending more money on charity. It's about making a high-return investment to fix a contractual breach.
We absolutely have to shift our perspective here. The old way of thinking sees welfare as a cost, a burden, a drain on public funds. The correct systems-based view sees it as an investment. And, more specifically, it's a recoverable expense, a kind of debt repayment for the state's failure to protect a citizen's rights. And the goal of this investment isn't to create dependency. It's the complete opposite. The goal is to restore a person's capacity to repair the damage that was caused by the rights violation so that they can transition from being a recipient of support, a so-called tax eater, to being a contributor to the economy, a taxpayer.
So what kind of return does an investment like this generate? Well, based on data from the SOE Framework's Proposition 1, the number is pretty staggering.
This is the social return on investment, or SROI.
For every $1 invested in a program that restores people's rights, the analysis shows a return of $29.40 in measurable social and economic value. That value comes from things like increased tax revenue and reduced long-term Social Security costs. From a purely financial standpoint, there is simply no better investment a society can make.
And let's be absolutely clear, this spending is not a gift. When the state fails to deliver on a substantive right, like the right to an education that's guaranteed under Article 26 of the Constitution, it accrues a debt to that citizen. This spending is simply the repayment of that debt.
So let's bring this all together. By debugging the logic of the social contract, we end up with a radically different and much more accurate understanding of the relationship between a citizen and the state.
This entire argument really rests on three pillars that are already foundational to our society. First, liberalism. Your rights are your original property. They come before the state. Second, the rule of law. The state has a contractual duty to protect those rights. And third, capitalism. Fulfilling that duty is the most profitable investment the state can possibly make.
And this leads us to the final conclusion, the ultimate patch for that duty fallacy bug we started with. When you demand that the state protect your rights, you are not a beggar asking for a handout. You are a creditor demanding repayment of a debt. The current system might be full of errors, but it's crucial to remember the core principle we talk about here. A bad system isn't fate, it's a design flaw, and specifications can always be rewritten.
If you want to help us write those new specifications, you can support the SOA framework and help us fund the proof of concept research. You can do that over on our Ko-Fi page.
And as always, if you want to take a deeper dive into the source code, we have full citations for Locke, Hobbes, Yamauchi, and the legal articles we talked about right there in the description below. Thanks for watching.